Thank you for your patience, everyone. While we got the slides showing, I apologize for that delay. My name is Steve VanderLeest. I am the chair of the Aerospace Working Group, and this is the update for 2024. Next slide, then. I thought today we'd follow the same kind of format that others did, looking at the past year and what's coming up in the current year. Because we're new, I thought I'd also spend some time on the mandate. So next slide. The mandate for the Aerospace Working Group was approved by TSC late in 2022. This group is developing use cases like the automotive and medical groups have done, Philip just described, and this use case should inform and influence the Linux architecture, the tools within the ecosystem as well. And then we will be working to derive technical requirements for avionics operating systems, focusing on what's unique in the aerospace world. We don't want to duplicate work that's been done in the automotive and medical device groups. So we'll try to look at what's distinctive there. And we are seeking to enhance and expand the avionics software lifecycle processes, practices, and tools, all with an eye to enabling the use of Linux in avionics systems, even those that are certified to high design assurance levels. The typical guidance in the civilian aerospace world is DO 178C. That standard describes the rigor that must be applied for software that's used on computing platforms in aircraft in flight, at least for commercial civilian side. Military and space have similar guidance as well. Next slide. Last year, we just got started, first year of the working group. So the working group was established. I was appointed as the chair of the group. And just recently, we added a vice chair, Martin Hall. And we've had fairly good attendance for being a new working group. There are 61 people that are registered as members. I'll tell you at the end here how you can also join. We've had 18 meetings so far. The attendance has been anywhere from 4 people to 13, averaging just over 7 people in any given meeting. So that's fairly good. I think some of the other working groups have somewhat more engagement, but for the first year, I was pleased with how many people have not only checked us out, but have been sustaining the group and participating regularly. We did have a webinar that we hosted as a working group that was available to to the general public, and you can find this video available now. It's presented by Stefano Stavolini from AMD, and he was presented on using the Zen hypervisor for safety critical domains, and this really applied to any of the domains, but he had some focus on aerospace. And you might wonder, well, shouldn't the webinar be on Linux? But one of our likely use cases is where a hypervisor provides partitioning and Linux is running in some of the partitions. So we found this a very useful webinar for us, but I think it was helpful for other working groups. We've also have 2 papers that have been published that are related to the ELISA Aerospace Working Group, published in the Digital Avionics Systems Conference from last fall. The titles are listed there. The IEEE does copyright those papers, so you have to go to the IEEE library to find those. But you should go to the IEEE Explorer library. You can search for those 2 titles. Next slide. So our current focus has been on 2 activities. We are working on a white paper, which is a survey on the state of the art in Linux, and we've broadened a little bit in other open source type operating systems in avionics. So the central focus is on Linux, but we did want to put that within the context of what other open source products and even other open source operating systems are being used within avionics. So that work is ongoing. If that turns out well, we'll at least release it as a white paper within ELISA, but we might also pursue publishing it in an appropriate aerospace venue so that folks that haven't heard of ELISA, we hope that paper will attract their attention and come check our work. A second thing that's ongoing is discussion on what features are required for aerospace. There is some work in other working groups on creating you might call it a profile of Linux. Linux is quite large. The kernel is large. There's a lot of work in different parts of the file system, applications, libraries, and so forth. But when you're certifying, you don't want too much code. You want to keep that down to only the code that's necessary for the features that you must have on the aircraft, because you have to prove it's correct. So you don't want to have code that you're not using that creates extra effort for certifying. So the discussion right now in our group has been on, well, what features are required for aerospace? And that has taken us in several directions. And so we're I think now have a good framework for continuing the discussion, and that I suspect may result then in our first use cases, which was part of our mandate. As Philip mentioned, we have not published a use case yet, so we hope that this discussion on the features required will help us narrow down on one or more use cases. One of our challenges, and I think this has also been a challenge for the other working groups, but we certainly have seen it, is that the companies participating are those use cases tend to have proprietary information in them, and so it's difficult to get a use case with enough detail that we can provide publicly. So we're working towards that, but that is one of our challenges, is just simply getting enough information that we are allowed to share. Next slide. So what's coming up in 2024? I want to preface this by saying these are some things that I thought probably are coming up, but our group has actually not settled on our 2024 goals yet. We will have our first meeting of the year actually tomorrow, and one of the agenda items is to set our 2024 goals. So this list is just my ideas, but the overall working group has not set their goals yet. So I just want to make sure that I don't oversell this. I think in 2024, we'll continue working on that white paper. I hope that we actually get to a point where we can have a first draft published, and we'll continue to work on that list of the features required for aerospace. And I hope that results in our first use case, or at least an outline of it, if not a full-fledged use case. So that's that second bullet is sort of the challenge is fulfilling our mandate to develop the use case. And I think we'll also be identifying, well, what are the challenges to using Linux at high levels of assurance, at least in aerospace, where for DO 178, the rigor for the highest levels, it's called level A, is quite significant. So all these things fit together, the white paper, the list of features, the use cases, all kind of lead you to what hurdles must we overcome in order to use Linux at those higher levels of assurance. We do have some action items or issues that we track on our GitHub site. You can find them, if you're interested, by going to the ELISA webpage, going to the aerospace community, and then there's a link to our GitHub area. We have 5 open issues there that we are tracking. One of them is to attract broader participation to our working group. So that was part of our hope in this presentation, is that perks your interest and you join. And then another one of the 5 is to look at SCPA as a possible approach to thinking about safety from a systems point of view. Aerospace is a little bit different, I think, than some of the other domains in that there's a long tradition of system engineering typically being a separate and first step to analysis of safety before going and allocating functionality into computing hardware and into computer software. So the focus on systems that Philip and others have mentioned, certainly appropriate, but those of us in aerospace that work in software often have much of that framework and groundwork done for us. So part of the challenge, I think, for us is to develop our approach for Linux, but also engage some of the system engineers in aerospace who typically do that first analysis of safety. What functionality within the aircraft is critical to the safety of the aircraft, that analysis. Well, we need to connect with them to think about, what are the issues and what are the potential solutions when Linux is the operating system, the fundamental software on the compute platform. So those are the things that I think we'll be tackling in 2024. Next slide. So finally, if you're interested in getting involved, we have a couple possibilities. There is the email list. You can sign up for that. And also there's a calendar where you can have the calendar invites added to your own personal calendar. And then, as I mentioned, we have a GitHub area. We do keep some notes on our on each of our meetings, and so you can look over what we've done in the past. And there are a few other materials there on the GitHub site so far. We're still fairly new, so you won't find a lot of the artifacts that some of the other working groups have already published. But I think this year we'll be getting there. Hopefully, you'll see, for example, the first draft of that white paper. I think that was my final slide. If you want to go one further, Min, I think yep, that's it. So if there are questions or comments, I'd be happy to take those. I'll open up the chat here and take a look. And John says, AUTOSAR has used the POSIX PSE set of specs to define Linux-like or a set of OS gestures. Have you considered this? No, but thank you for the suggestion. I think that might be a good thing for us to look at in terms of our white paper. That might give us a little bit more landscape to explore. We hope to have the white paper be reasonably far looking, that it takes into account what are the valid and feasible options in terms of open source operating systems that are being used in aerospace or are being investigated for use in order to kind of sketch out the edge of the envelope, the state of the art. Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. Any other questions? Feel free to put it on the chat if you want, or come off mute and let me know. All right, so thank you for your attention, and I encourage you to check out those links and come join and see what we're doing and particularly participate. Thank you, everyone.